Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I ask you to please seat? Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to the 8th Annual Leo Awards. To honor America, can I please ask everyone to rise and remain standing for the presentation of the colors by the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department Honor Guard, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and singing of our national anthem by Oxbridge Academy Junior Aaron Buckley. Today's invocation and reading of the fallen will be administered by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office Chaplain Mike Toby. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight of the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Beautiful. Good morning. In honor, let us bow our heads in prayer. We come to you, O God, today with grateful and thankful hearts. Thankful for the freedoms that we share and our abundant blessings. We remember that others before us paid a great price for these freedoms. Today we remember those who have died this past year in the line of duty. We feel the loss of these special men and women. We ask that you keep us in remembrance of their sacrifice. We also pray for their families and friends who have suffered much. God, give them the grace to forgive if necessary and the faith to believe for the days ahead. We also ask that you bless those who will be rewarded today for their outstanding dedication and their performance. We honor them as the best of the best, dedicated to protect us from harm while they willfully put themselves in harm's way. And now we will light the memorial candle in honor of the fallen Deputy Christopher L. Smith, Leon County Sheriff's Office, cause of death, gunfire, November 22nd, 2014. Police Officer Charles Kondek, Tarpon Springs Police Department, cause of death, gunfire, December 21st, 2014. Police Officer Jared Forsyth, Ocala Police Department, cause of death, accident, April 6th, 2015.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mayors, sheriffs, chiefs, deputies, officers, and invited guests. Welcome again to the 2015 ASIS International 8th Annual Leo Awards. My name is Frank Good, Chapter Chairman and Event Chairman for this year. This year's law enforcement event has brought together the best of the best in law enforcement. 26 agencies representing local, state, and the federal government have nominated 153 officers within the counties of Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River to receive awards in 12 categories. Since the inception of this event, over 1,000 officers have been nominated for awards. This year, for the first time, we have a husband and wife that have been nominated for awards representing different agencies. Corporal Robert Mooney from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office has been nominated for a Lifetime Achievement, and Assistant Chief Sarah Mooney from the West Palm Beach Police Department is nominated for Chief of the Year. That 1,000 number represents all the great work being done in our communities by the men and women who put it on the line each and every day. Before we start our awards program, there are several individuals I'd like to recognize, starting with our current chapter officers. When your name is called, please stand. Audience, please hold your applause. Vice Chair Don Neff, Vice Chair Patrick Miller, Secretary Gary Pentek, CPP, Treasurer and past Chapter Chairman Ray Hall, and I would like to recognize Chapter Founder and past Chairman Ken Worster. Gentlemen, thank you very much for all your efforts this year. In order for this program to be presented to you today, we are very fortunate to have some generous table sponsors who in some cases have been with our event since its inception. To honor these wonderful companies, can I please ask each sponsor to stand when your company's name is called, and audience, again, please hold your applause until everybody's been recognized. PNC Bank, Manos Public Safety, East Point Homeowners Association, Allied Barton Security Services, Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, The Breakers, Old Marsh Golf Club, Results Performance Consulting, RPCHR, the Waxahachie Club, Cisco, St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, Invictus, the Bears Club, the Carlisle of Palm Beach, Mirasol, Martin Fence Company, Admiral's Cove, ADT, and last but certainly not least, the Honda Classic. Thank you all very much for supporting us. As with any such event of this size, corporate sponsorship is paramount. Without their support, we would not have an event. I would like at this time to want to identify the major corporate sponsors, and please ask each of them to come up to the stage. Again, audience, please hold your applause. Representing our titanium sponsors, from PBF Energy, Narda Rivera. From the law firm of Lytle, Ryder, Smith, Ivy, and Fromrath, Lance Ivy. From ABM Security Services, retired Palm Springs Police Chief Mark Hall. From Retirement Solutions, Florida Retirement Solutions, Scott Bovey. From CSI Palm Beach and Carpenter Electric, Rick Seymour. From PGA Resort and Spa, Nicole D'Angelo. Also representing our silver sponsors, from G4S Security Solutions, West Palm Beach office, Ed Rodriguez. And from the Boca Raton office, Frank Hernandez. Kaiser University, Dr. Anthony Barrios. From Access Communication, Chris Allen and Tina Sprigg. Representing our newest sponsor, Children of Wounded Warriors, Bobby Simone. And finally, we'd like to thank WPTV Channel 5 News Director Dan Wilson for partnering with us and for the second year in a row streaming this event live. Dan, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our corporate sponsors.
Newest sponsor, thank you.
Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thanks very much.
Well, this is like roll call up here. I'd like to turn this over to Lance Ivy from Ivy and Fromrath Law Firm. Lance?
First, I want to thank ACES. I've got to know Frank Good and Mr. Neff over the last couple of years, and I can tell you wholeheartedly that their passion and their hearts are in the right place, and but for them, we would not be here today. So I want to give them another round of ovation, please. I'm an attorney, and believe it or not, we have a lot in common with the police officers. One, my dad was a police officer. Two, you guys are all soldiers, and I was a soldier. I was a paratrooper in the infantry. And three, everybody hates us until they need us. You guys are often criticized and seldom thanked, and I really want to give a heartfelt thank you to all those ladies and gentlemen in the law enforcement community, the support staff that goes into allowing you to do your job, and the family, friends, and loved ones, because I can tell you, you guys are often criticized, seldom thanked, and I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. One thing I can tell you is that you guys are the beacons of hope to the weak. You guys are the barrier between anarchy and peace. And you guys are the enforcers for the lawful against the lawless. And unlike many professions like mine, when I leave my job, I leave my job. You guys carry your badge, you carry your responsibilities 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we thank you for that. And God bless you and your family. Thank you very much.
Now comes one of the fun parts of the afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to the ushers for this year's event. All these individuals are currently enrolled in a Palm Beach County Police Academy. These recruits are all attending the night academy while maintaining full-time and part-time jobs during the day. They have also personally funded the cost of attending the academy, and that, by the way, is in excess of $4,000. Each recruit has made a decision to sacrifice time away from family and friends while pursuing a career in law enforcement. For the first time in the history of this event, I'm pleased to announce that the entire class of BLE 179 is present today, and that's 25 people. When I went and spoke with them, every one of them said they wanted to be here today. So we're very honored to have them here. Recruits, well deserved, thank you. Recruits, please stand when your name is called. I promise I'll try not to butcher your names. Christopher Alvarado, Brian Berlingo, Ralph Bradley, Daniel Baumgardner, Roberto Crispin, Robert Hatcher, Jarvis Hollis, Chet King, Philip Lejeune, Tiffany Liming, Jesse Longwell, Tara McNabb, Santiago Placido, Patrick Park, Francis Persuade, Thomas Richards, Aubrey Richow, Angel Rodriguez, Garrett Seegers, Justin Schulman, David Simser, James Velez, Jody Walker, and Valone Williams. Please give them a big round of applause. I'd also personally like to say a thank you. I know they're sitting at the back table. Gene Hall from the Academy. Gene, raise your hand. Gene is the coordinator for the Academy, and Officer Robert Height from Palm Springs Police Department is the Academy drill instructor. Robert, if you're there, raise your hand, please. And Chief Schroeder, the director of the Academy. Our committee would like to thank all of you for allowing the recruits to be part of this program today. Thank you very much. This next section, I'd like to address to the chiefs, sheriffs, and command staff. Our committee has strategically positioned with their seating these recruits throughout the room. We do not put them all at the same table, and the reason for that is we would like you to exchange conversation with them. We would like you to engage in conversation about any openings or possible openings your agency may have. These recruits are the crime fighters of the future. As I stated, they're all working full-time and part-time jobs, and they are actively looking for law enforcement employment. They are about a month and a half, I believe, into their current school, and they've taken time away from their full-time jobs today to be here for this event. So please, command staff, if you have an opportunity, if you have a recruit at your table, take a moment, get to know them. And if you do have openings, which I know quite a few agencies here do, please take a moment and discuss that with them, or at least pass a business card so they can continue that conversation after. Once again, I'd like to thank the command staff and everybody else associated with the Academy. Last year, the Leo Committee created the Leo Event Scholarship. We seeded $500 with that scholarship, and it was presented to a recruit who best exemplifies giving everything they have in order to fulfill the dream of becoming a law enforcement officer. The demands of attending a 9-month academy, studying physical fitness, firearms training, exams, all while working full-time and part-time jobs, is an undertaking few can appreciate. This scholarship program was so well received by our corporate sponsor group that for this year's scholarship, we're very excited to announce that 2 corporate sponsors, BPF Energy and Florida Retirement Solutions, have donated $4,500 to this scholarship program. I would like to ask from Florida Retirement Solutions retired FDLE agent Scott Bovey and retired Martin County Sheriff's Office Detective Ken Bagis to come up and help present this year's scholarships checks. The Leo Committee, in conjunction with the criminal justice staff, has selected 4 individuals to receive this year's Leo Event Scholarship. Recruits, this is directed to you. When your names are called, please come up to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating recruits Aubrey Rochelle, Philip Lejeune, Robert Hatcher, and Jarvis Hollis. Give us a second. They're all the way in the back of the room. I was told they're making good cops. They're already eating. He's got a check for you right here. Robert? Yes, sir. Congratulations. Be safe. Thank you. Thank you, sir. There you go. You're welcome.
The wrong way. Sorry, Aubrey.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's up to you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today. I've attended many police law enforcement memorials, and I just want to give you my gratitude as a current and a retired law enforcement officer. And if you guys ever need anything, it's not just about retirement. You've got our website, you've got our name, call us. We're a brother in blue, and we mean that sincerely. So thank you to you, and more importantly, your families, and to Frank Good.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thanks, guys. Again, we'd like to thank BPF Energy and Florida Retirement Solutions for their wonderful donation. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you the liaisons for this year's event. Currently, we have 40 agencies that have stepped up and volunteered either a civilian or a sworn officer as their agency's representative. These liaisons were tasked with compiling, reviewing, and finalizing all the nominations and RSVPs within their respective agencies. Their tireless commitment to this program has enabled the Leo Committee to redirect their efforts on securing additional sponsorships and aggressively manage the logistics associated with producing such a large event. I would like to introduce these exceptional people to you now. Liaisons, please stand when your name is called, and audience, again, please hold off on your applause until everybody's been recognized. Jupiter Island Police Department, Accreditation Manager Melissa Clanton. Boca PD, Mark Economou. West Palm PD, Lieutenant Wendy Morse. Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Bruce Hannon. Delray Beach PD, Beatrice Scricio. Northbound PD, Captain Bobby Fury. Martin County Sheriff's Office, Joanne Costello. St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, Administrative Assistant Tammy Schwab. Juno Beach PD, Lieutenant Paul Furtag. Jupiter Inlet Colony PD, Officer Dale Allen. Green Acres PD, Lieutenant Brady Myers. Palm Beach Gardens PD, Ann Miller. Lantana PD, Officer Nelson Berrios. Palm Springs PD, Lieutenant Robert Perez. Port St. Lucie PD, Sergeant Frank Sable. Stewart PD, Captain Joseph Tominelli. Fort Pierce PD, Sergeant Jason Braun. Town of Lake Clark Shores, Anita Calhoun. Atlantis PD, Detective Marvin Jenny. Ocean Ridge PD, recently retired Chief of Police Chris Unuzzi. Gulfstream PD, Chief Garrett Ward. Highland Beach PD, Lieutenant Eric Lundberg. South Palm Beach PD, Lieutenant Nick Alvaro. Manalapan PD, Lieutenant Chris Fahey. Florida Wildlife Commission, Captain Jeff Alderlin. Florida Highway Patrol, Sergeant Manny Rivera. Riviera Beach PD, Major Leonard Mitchell. Palm Beach County School Board Police, I have two representatives, Commander Rick Morris and Major Braxton Davis. And I am very pleased to announce for the first time from Indian River County, Sebastian PD Deputy Chief Greg Witt and Vero Beach PD Chief David Curry. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a tremendous hand. This event, as you might imagine, requires a tremendous amount of work, time, effort, understanding, and patience. The Leo Committee that organized and presented today's program is comprised of 9 individuals from both the public and private sector. They are dedicated, passionate, and respected in the community for their volunteer work within the law enforcement arena. The committee has been meeting for the last year and has devoted countless hours of their own time and money to ensure this program is the best it can be. I am truly honored to be part of this committee and to work alongside these very dedicated people. I'd like to introduce our committee to you at this point. Again, please hold your applause. Retired Air Force Colonel and current Director of Security for East Point Country Club, Dieter Hines. Former Officer and Director of Security for Trump Towers, Ray Hall. Retired NYPD Detective and current Director of Security for PGA National and Resort, Bob Puglisi. I didn't know we had friends, Bob. General Sales Manager, CSI, Palm Beach, Kurt Freeman. Loss Prevention Manager, Ritz-Carlton, Singer Island, Don Neff. From the Jupiter Police Department, Major Chris Smith, Unfortunately, Major Smith is in a seminar in Atlanta, but I know he's watching online. And from the Riviera Beach Police Department, Major Leonard Mitchell. From the DeQuesta Police Department, retired Lieutenant and current Director of Security for Frenchman's Reserve, Jason Turner. And they don't know this yet, but I'd like to thank my daughter, Brittany, please stand, and my wife, Gail, who created the centerpieces for every table that you see here today. Please give our committee a hand, folks. And by the way, if you're looking for seashells on the beach of Lake Worth and Boynton, forget it. They're on your tables. You're not going to find any. One last thing before we get to our keynote speaker. Each table under a plate is a green dot. You don't have to pick it up now. We don't want spilled food. If you have the green dot, the centerpiece is yours for the taking. If you don't want to take it, just go ahead and give it to someone else at your table if they'd like it. Regarding your gift bags for all the nominees, inside one of the gift bags is a coupon for a free scuba dive with a certified dive master. That's about a $350 value. There'll be a little yellow ticket attached to your coupon, so that's how you can redeem that. Nominees with your gift bags, all those donations in there were courtesy of our sponsors, so let's give them a hand one more time for that. Each year, our committee holds a debriefing upon the conclusion of the event, and one of the first questions we ask ourselves is, did we select the best possible honoree? As far as the committee is concerned, every nominee should be an honoree. We know that's not possible. But I'd like to read you a very brief article, and it gives us as a committee the answer that we're looking for. This is from the Palm Beach Post, and it's dated the 14th of May. It's titled, West Palm Beach Officer Honored in National Top Cops Service. A West Palm Beach police officer was among those honored Tuesday night during a ceremony in Washington. Officer Christopher Nebling, a 7-year veteran of the department, was recognized during the Top Cops Awards dinner at the JW Marriott Hotel. Nebling was recognized for his efforts to stop a man who reportedly was armed with an AK-47 rifle. On the night of October 26th of 2013, Nebling shot and killed Dmitry Polian, 24, during a confrontation at Howard Park. During his remarks Tuesday, Vice President Joe Biden referenced the confrontation while speaking collectively about acts of police heroism. You brought the heroism that earned you a Bronze Star in Afghanistan home to stop a mass shooting in Palm Beach, Biden said. Nebling, a West Palm officer since 2008, served tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. According to the police accounts, Nebling was responding to a shots-fired call in the 900 block of Northwest 6th Street near Tamarind Avenue. He followed and tried to stop an SUV that was seen leaving the scene. The driver sped away and eventually crashed into a median near Howard Park. As Nebling got out of his patrol car, Polian reportedly pointed his rifle at Officer Nebling and was about to fire. Nebling returned multiple shots at Polian and then rendered aid to the stricken suspect. I guess our committee understands now that we're making the right choices and right decisions. Officer Nebling received the Valor Award last year. So we're very honored and proud, and wanted to make sure we recognize Officer Nebling for his fantastic work. Please give him a hand, folks. Now, besides the awards, I know you're all here to listen to our keynote speaker. Police Chief Edward DeVoe of the Watertown, Massachusetts Police Department and his officers have been recognized most recently by President Obama during a ceremony at the White House for their heroic actions in the pursuit and subsequent capture of the Boston Marathon bombers. Chief DeVoe's officers engaged in a prolonged gun battle with both suspect brothers, to include seeking cover from homemade bombs that were being thrown at them. The gun battle ended with one brother being killed and the remaining brother being captured after a 3-day city lockdown after an additional gun battle. Last month, a jury convicted and sentenced the remaining suspect brother to death. The actions taken by Chief DeVoe's officers uphold the principles of the oath every officer in his room has taken. The bio for Chief DeVoe is as follows. Edward P. DeVoe has been the Watertown Police Chief since 2001. Chief DeVoe has served within every division of the police department since being appointed in 1983. He attended Watertown Public Schools and graduated from Watertown High School in 1974. He earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Westfield State College and a master's from Anne Marie College. Chief DeVoe participated in the FBI National Academy program, completing it in March of 1999. He was appointed by the governor to the Northeast Homeland Security Regional Advisory Council and served as its chairman for 4 years, beginning in 2004. Chief DeVoe has served as president of the Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council from 2009 to 2010. That organization is a nonprofit corporation and a law enforcement council comprised of a consortium of 50 police departments in Middlesex and Essex County, 2 county sheriff's departments. He served on the executive board of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association for over 10 years, representing the 50 police chiefs and their communities in Middlesex County. 2009, he was the recipient of the Theodore Mann Regional Leadership Award, which is given to an elected or appointed local government official. In 2013, the chief received awards from the Greater Boston Federal Executive Board of Middlesex Bar Association for his exemplary leadership and extraordinary efforts to protect the citizens of Watertown and Greater Boston. Chief DeVoe is a member of the Watertown Rotary and serves on the Board of Trustees for the Watertown Savings Bank. He has spoken at events of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing many times, including the College of Policing in London, Clinton School for Public Service, and the Harvard Kennedy School. He has also testified at congressional hearings on the lessons learned from the Boston Marathon bombings and manhunt in Watertown. It gives the committee tremendous respect and honor to introduce Chief Edward DeVoe.
Frank, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and I thank the committee for inviting me down here. Before I talk, this is a very impressive organization, what you do here. I'm kind of jealous. We don't do this back in the Boston area, and to recognize the fallen officers and the nominees that have done some great work. The committee has served, helped me understand the people that have been nominated, and I truly understand that there's some great police work going on here, and you should be honored for your service. As Frank said, I'm here to talk about the Boston Marathon and what happened. The marathon in Boston is a big deal to us back home. It's been around for a long time. It's on Patriots' Day, a state holiday in Massachusetts. It's always on the third Monday. It's my favorite weekend of the year. Everybody comes together. Our professional baseball team, the Red Sox, are always home that weekend. And very unusual, they play at 11 a.m. on that Monday. So people can go to the Red Sox game, 35,000 people, and then when the game is over, they go down to Kenmore Square, which is about the 25-mile marker of the marathon. And I know there's some people here from the Northeast, and you can translate my accent, I think, a little bit when I say those things. The marathon is a big deal. It's a big deal to me. You can't be in Boston for very long and not know somebody that ran the marathon, was a volunteer, or whatever it was. Myself personally, I ran the marathon 3 times prior to the bombings, and then in 2014, I ran the marathon with 12 of my officers. So it's a big deal to me as well. So when the bombs went off in Boston, it was after the elite runners had finished. It was just the regular people running for charities that were crossing the finish line, and their loved ones were around. And we just never dreamed that something as great as our marathon would be attacked by terrorists. But it did happen that day, and it hurt a lot. As people know, 3 people were instantly killed at the finish line. Over 240 others were injured, some extremely injured. We had 17 amputees and all kinds of other injuries. I'm here to kind of speak today about the efforts of the Watertown Police Department, but Boston Police Department is just an excellent, excellent police department. We work very closely with them, and they did some heroic work that day along with the other responders. You know, you've heard the term Boston Strong. When I think about Boston Strong, one of the things I think about is every single person that made it to a hospital survived. Every single person, and that was because of planning with the medical, the fire, the police, and the hospitals. So a lot of good things went on there. And I don't have the time to talk about all the great things that happened in Boston. But I'm very proud, and when Frank called me, I was honored to come here, because I'll go anywhere to speak about the men and women of Watertown Police Department. I couldn't be prouder of their efforts. To play things out, we had the Boston bombing on Monday, and the city literally was brought to its knees. We were devastated that this could possibly happen. And so I was sending probably about 12 or 14 of my officers a day into Boston, working 12 or 14-hour shifts. We were in a regional law enforcement council, so they go in there with a group of supervisors. And I was just proud as the police chief that we were sending people in. My community was proud. In Watertown, we're kind of a small community. We're 4.1 square miles. We have 35,000 people that live there. We touch Boston. We touch Cambridge. From Watertown Square to Harvard Square is probably about 3 miles. From Watertown Square to downtown Boston is probably about 5 or 6. We're a small police department, probably just typical of most police departments across the country. We have 65 officers. As Frank said, I've been the police chief for 14 years, and our mantra has always been, our goal when we sat down at our staff meetings or anything like that, we wanted to be the best police department in Massachusetts, and we kind of tried to strive for that. So now things move on the marathon. Tuesday, Boylston Street is closed. All the federal agencies are coming into Boston to do the crime scene. Boston's biggest crime scene in their history is there. And on Thursday morning, the president came to Boston to do a memorial service, to tell the people of Boston it was going to be okay. And the city of Boston really needed to hear that. Like I said, we were knocked down, we were down and out a bit, and we needed the President of the United States to come in, and he did a very good talk at that church over in Dorchester that morning. But you can imagine from a law enforcement standpoint how taxing that was. We already had the crime scenes in Boston. There was rumors in the media that one of the suspects was a victim and was in the hospital, so we had to have extra security at all the Boston hospitals so the loved ones of the survivors could feel safe in that hospital. So it was a lot going on, if you will. At 5:30 that night, the FBI released the pictures of the 2 brothers on Thursday night, and that started the ticking of the clock, where things started to happen. At 10:30 Thursday night, Sean Collier, an MIT police officer, was sitting in his cruiser, just finishing out his shift, was one of the most popular police officers in that organization at the campus of MIT. The 2 brothers wanted to get another firearm, and they wanted to go down to New York City and use the bombs they had to kill more people. So they saw Sean sitting in his cruiser, and they snuck up behind him. He never knew they were there. They opened his door, and they executed Sean 3 times in the back of the head before Sean even knew what happened, and took off. They weren't able to get Sean's gun because it was a triple-lock holster And they tried for a while Sean bled out right in front of them, and then they fled. They carjacked a vehicle in the Alston-Brighton area just after midnight and was going to use that Mercedes SUV to go down to Boston, go down to New York and kill more people. Now, back in Watertown, we're at roll call. We have 4 officers out in the street and a patrol sergeant. The lieutenant on the shift tells the shift, you know, Sean's been killed, but we have no idea that it's related to the Boston Marathon bombings. But they're told, be safe out there, and they hit the street. About 10 minutes into our shift, Cambridge and MIT call, and they said there's a Watertown resident that witnessed Sean's shooting. She's distraught. She went home. Her dad just called. Can you have an officer pick her up? So we had, one of our female officers was working, and she, Kathy Wells, picked her up. And as they started to drive to Cambridge, this young girl told her, please tell me everything's going to be okay. I was at the Boston Marathon. I was really close by when the bombs went off. She wasn't hurt, but she saw that in the horrific scene there. Now she sees Sean Collier killed, and she's clinging on to my officer as they start to drive to Cambridge. And now Cambridge calls us and says, we're tracking this vehicle, this Mercedes SUV that was involved in the carjacking. We had no idea that it was related to the Boston bombings. We just had 3 officers out in the street and our sergeant. And Joe Reynolds, 7 years on the job, they're tracking the vehicle. They tell him, hey, Joe, the vehicle is on Dexter Ave. It's on the east end of Watertown, closest to Cambridge. So Joe goes down there thinking it's going to be a couple of kids from Cambridge that stop to carjack the car, and as soon as he goes to pull it over, they're probably going to jump out of the car and they're going to run through the back streets. So he calls it in, and the sergeant on duty, John McClellan, 22 years on the job, says, Joe, don't stop that car until I get closer. I'm down the street. I'm getting close. Let me get closer. And Dexter Ave is a side street, but it's kind of a long street. It's about 3/4 of a mile long, and he can see Joe down the street. And he says, Joe, I'm getting close, but just give me a second. And then he says, okay, Joe, light them up, meaning turn your lights on. Let's stop them. And they're both thinking we're going to start chasing these kids through the backyards. What John doesn't see is they turn onto Laurel Street, a very short street part of Laurel Street, this part. And I told you Watertown's 4.1 square miles, 35,000 people. We don't have a lot of open space. We don't have a lot of green space. On this street is 1- and 2-family homes. There's only a couple of trees on this street. It's mostly asphalt with chain link fence. And so they pull onto that street. And before Joe Reynolds can turn his lights on, the 2 brothers actually were riding in tandem cars, but all Joe was focusing on was that SUV. And the 2 cars stop, and Joey's 2 car lengths behind them. And John can't see him because he's still on Dexter Ave. They're out of view. And the older brother gets out of the car and starts charging at Joe, shooting at him, 2 car lengths away, on a back street in Watertown. And Joe of course, never expected that. And what he was able to do was to lean over, try to get out of harm's way, put the car in reverse, and hit the gas pedal. And he said, Chief, I was just trying to create some distance. I thought I was going to bounce off a telephone pole, but I was lucky my car went straight back. And I say to him, when we talk about it, I say it to anybody, that 80% of us probably would have froze in that situation. I put myself in that group. But Joey didn't. And he saved his own life and probably the other officers that were responding by doing that. And he created some distance while he's still being shot at. And now here comes John McClellan around the corner, my sergeant. Joe Reynolds, like I said, you know, Frank told you I graduated from Watertown High School. We're a local police department. Joe graduated Watertown High School. John graduated Watertown High School. Here comes John around the corner, and Joe's yelling on the radio, shots fired, but John's brain can't almost work fast enough to understand what's going on. And he comes around the corner, and he sees Joe in reverse, wondering what the heck is going on, and as he pulls onto Laurel Street. And he gets around right through the middle of his windshield. And the bullet goes right by his ear. John thought he lost his ear. His ear was on fire, and the bullet ended up in the headrest right behind him. And the glass from the windshield went in John's face. And now he can just hear bullets pinging off his car. And that's how my 2 officers are on Laurel Street at 12:40 a.m. now with the Boston terrorists. had no idea what they were getting themselves into. So John can hear the bullets bouncing off his vehicle. He stops. He's got this door open, and he's trying to reach in to the console and pull out the patrol rifle that we have in that vehicle. And he's hitting the button, trying to get it loose, and he can't do it. And Frank said I talk a lot about the lessons learned in marathon. And I'll say this now because it's the first time I've spoken since the trial is finished. And I know we're being recorded, but usually I do this behind closed doors. But one of the lessons we learned was we put those patrol rifles in that vehicle, and I'm speaking to the commanders in this room right now, and I told everybody, don't friggin' touch those rifles unless you need them. And that was wrong. The guys just didn't have the muscle memory to keep doing it all the time. We checked their weapons, obviously, at roll call every day, but we never had them take that patrol rifle in and out. And one of our sergeants, because it rattled, had taken a strap and tucked it in there so it wouldn't rattle. And that made it even more difficult. So John was not able to get that patrol rifle out. You know, of course, since that time, every roll call we have them do, and we were doing it for months and months and months. And they said, Chief, when can we stop doing this? And I said, well, I think now we'll do it once or twice a week. But, so I'm sure everybody in this room probably does it differently, but that mistake was on me. So John can hear the bullets bouncing off, and he thinks, he said, they're probably closing in on me, and he's got the side door open, and he's kind of leaning into the vehicle, and he's realizes, I don't know what's going to happen next. So he decides to put the car in drive and let the vehicle start to slowly roll down the street. And this was, like I told you, asphalt sidewalk, street, and it's kind of a V, and the vehicle, the sergeant's car, which is an SUV, just starts to go down the street about 5 miles an hour. And John can see one of the 2 or 3 trees that is on Laurel Street. He says, I got to get my cover. That's the only cover I can see on this whole street. Now, Joey Reynolds is back at his vehicle, and he sees the sergeant. He sees the vehicle go down the street. So he says, damn, the sergeant's taking the fight to him. I'm going to go running over there. So he runs over, gets behind the SUV as it's rolling down the street, and he's on the passenger side shooting down range at the 2 brothers. And he gets parallel to that tree now, and now he sees John behind that tree. And Joe says to John, Sarge, who's driving the car? And he says, get over here, I'll tell you later. And now the 2 of them are behind that tree. And the vehicle slowly goes down the street. And now the first pipe bomb comes up the street. Tink, 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 and explodes and blows out all the windows pretty much in John's vehicle. But they were protected because they were behind, because the vehicle was between them and the bomb. And now, you know, and I know everybody in this room has probably seen the manhunt that played out over the 16, 18 hours. What most people don't realize is what happened with this gun battle. I mean, most police officers in the room know that, you know, a cop gunfight probably lasts 10 seconds. 1 minute would be a long time, right? For 4.5 minutes, it was just John and Joe on that back street of Watertown as they fought. Now here comes another pipe bomb down the street. Tink, 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 comes right up beside them, and John and Joe run into the driveway and clutch, and the bomb doesn't go off. And Joe says, Sarge, we got to go around this house, get back to my car. We're way too close. And they start to climb over the fence, and John says, no, I'm not giving up any ground. And he goes back to that tree. And now the bomb is about 15 feet away from him. And John's looking at the bomb, being shot at, expecting to have another bomb thrown at him. And he continues to fight. And I said, John, you know, what were you thinking? And he says, well, Chief, I kept looking at the bomb in the street, and I was hoping it would change colors and tell me it was going to blow up and I'd run away again. And I knew, I told my brain, stop thinking that way. I got to continue to fight. And I did. He goes, I was so mad, I wanted to run out in that street and pick up that bomb and throw it back at him, but I didn't know if they had a remote or anything like that. So I just continued to fight. And of course, my other officers are starting to, you know, come this way. Next officer, Miguel Colon, comes in, pulls in, sees Joe and John behind that tree. He puts his floodlight down the street trying to illuminate the 2 brothers, and he can't, it's immediately shot out, and he can't get out of his cruiser because of the gunfire on him. And we have some other officers starting to show, and obviously Greater Boston network of radio is being notified, and they're saying anybody in the Boston area, go to Watertown. They need help. They're pinned down on a back street. And so they're coming, but You know, it's going to take a few minutes for them to get there, and then a lot of people knew where Watertown was, but they didn't know where Dexter and Laurel was. A lot of officers that first showed up got confused where it was and didn't get there for a while. But it was just my officers there for a while. And now here comes the third pipe bomb down the street. And John goes and runs into that driveway again. There's not that much room in this driveway, and he clutches again, and this bomb went off. And it shook John to the core, to the point that he couldn't see. His eyes were bouncing in his head a bit, and John had to holster his weapon and put his hands in the sockets of his eyes to get his eyes to focus again. And I've spoken to some military people and said, yeah, that's exactly what happens, you know, if you're too close to a bomb. You know, he shook his whole body. But John went back to that tree and continued to fight. He didn't give up any ground. And now one of my other off-duty sergeants was actually on his way home when he heard the call of the carjacked vehicle, and he thought the same thing. It's going to be a couple of kids, we're going to chase them. I'm in my family minivan. They won't recognize me. I'll go down and try to help those guys out. So he's halfway there when he hears Joe yell, shots fired, and now he's hustling down there. And this is Sergeant Jeff Pugilis. Jeff's been on the job 35 years. He's a veteran. He's one of our firearms instructors, and Jeff and I actually graduated high school together. And he shows up and he sees John and Joe behind a tree, and he said, I'm going to go around on the other side, and I'm going to flank them and see if I can't give them some support. So he can see John and Joe. John and Joe didn't even know Jeff was there. And Jeff starts to go through these backyards. And, of course, this whole neighborhood, this little neighborhood, is being woken up by gunfire and bombs going off. In one of the houses is this guy Gary that I went to high school with as well. He's in bed. His wife's out of town. He hears all this. And I talked to him the next day, and I said, Gary, what, you know, he says, I heard all the thing. I said, walk downstairs. I opened my front door. I thought it was kids playing with fireworks. So I opened up the door, and I was going to tell him, knock it off. And then I was like, holy. And he closed the door. And he goes back into his kitchen. He's standing there. And Jeff now is going through those backyards. And now the younger brother, as we know now from some of the witness testimony, takes out a knapsack, lights it, and heaves it down the street. And it's one of the pressure cooker bombs that went off at the Boston Marathon. Obviously, they couldn't throw it as far as the pipe bombs, but this just lit up the neighborhood, big flame, and then all the dust and debris was hard to see. While that was going on, Jeff is going through those backyards. Gary hears that bomb go off that's much, much louder than the first two. And he runs out his back door. And Jeff is coming, he sees this guy running up through the backyard. He's yelling, stop, police, stop, police. A lot of people would have shot Gary. But Jeff, I said, 35 years on the job. I said, Jeff, you didn't shoot him. He goes, no, Chief, I could see his hands. I thought I could see his hands. I didn't think he had a gun. And I thought he was one of the bad guys. I didn't even know how many bad guys there were. But if he was running away, that was good for us. And the people arriving probably could help. And I said to Gary, when I talked to him, Gary, didn't you hear the cop yelling stop? He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, well, for a 50-something-year-old fat guy, I just went over that fence and just kept running. So Jeff continues, and he comes up between Gary's house and the other house, and he's closest to the two brothers now. And they're behind a vehicle shooting downrange at John and Joe, Miguel, and all the other officers that have started to arrive here. And so Jeff starts shooting. But they're behind their vehicle, and like I said, Jeff's one of our firearms instructors, so he shoots a few times, knows he's not really got an angle. So he starts to skip shoot bullets underneath the car. And we know by the autopsy, he gets the older brother in the leg. And the brother looks up and sees him now and charges at him. And he charges at Jeff, and he's in the driveway, probably about 20 feet away from Jeff with a car between them, and they just start shooting at each other. And Jeff was lucky to be alive, obviously. There's bullet holes all around where Jeff was. There's some over his head. There's some on the side. And this is Gary's house. And a number of those bullets went right through Gary's wall, through his kitchen, and into his bathroom. So if Gary didn't run out his door, he might have been killed right in his own kitchen. And so now Jeff is saying to me, Chief, I knew I had to hit him sometimes. I thought I was getting sent en masse, but he didn't, and it's not the movies. It's not video games where you shoot somebody once and they go flying back and that's it, or blood spurts out everywhere. This guy got shot a number of times and continued to shoot at Jeff. And then his gun runs out of bullets, the older brother. And he throws his gun at Jeff and starts to run. Jeff holsters his weapon, and what Jeff didn't know was his gun was out of bullets as well. So we got a break there. If the older brother had a couple more bullets, Jeff would have been screwed on the side of that house. And now the older brother, instead of running back to where his brother was, he decides to run towards the police officers. And you've heard me talk a little bit here tonight, and I've said older brother, younger brother. I will never say those two people's names. Never. When anybody from my department talks about this, they don't deserve the time. Our time should be concentrated on the survivors and all the people that did it. I think the media does a terrible job sometimes about telling us about who that suspect was and what their life was about and everything like that, instead of talking about the people that died and the people that lost limbs and everything else like that. You'll have some critical incidents down here in South Florida, and I suggest to you the same thing, that we stop talking about these people. But anyway, that's just me ranting a little bit. But now, so the older brother starts running up towards the police officers, and John's behind that tree, and he's run out of bullets. And he can see the older brother coming up the street, and he can see he doesn't have his gun, but it's hard for him to see because this is like 10 minutes of one. Because the bombs went off and all the glue and the particles that were in there, it was very difficult to see. There was very little lighting anyway with the street lights that were there. So John can't quite see, but he can see Jeff, and he can see that he thinks Jeff's in trouble. So he comes running out and stands in the middle of the street and points his gun at the older brother and said, "Stop, get down on the ground," and he swore a couple of times about shooting him in the head. And I said, "John, you didn't even have any bullets." He goes, "Yeah, but he didn't know that." So I was pretending my gun was shooting. I said, "John, you got to be shitting me." You know, they don't teach you that. They don't teach you that at the academy, but they will now. And the older brother kind of stopped, and Jeff was able to tackle him and get him down on the ground. And Jeff's on him, trying to handcuff him. And John is yelling, "Sarge, get off him. He's got a bomb." And the older brother had his chest to the ground, and they're trying to get his hands out from underneath him. And John is just convinced he's got to have a bomb strapped to his chest. That's why he was running up in between all of us. He just wanted to kill more cops. And Jeff is in his zone. He's trying to do it, and John's like the most popular guy in our department. Everybody loves John. And John goes, "Well, screw it. If he's in, I'm in. I jump in. I just hope when we get blown up, it doesn't hurt too much." And he jumps on top, and he's trying to handcuff the older brother as well. And Joey Reynolds comes running down. And now the younger brother gets into that stolen SUV. And it was pointed out the other way. He could have fled and maybe get away for a little bit. Instead, he makes a three-point turn and comes roaring up the street. He wants to run my three officers over. He sees them right in the middle of the street. So they come flying down the street, and all the other police officers back at the intersection are yelling, "He's coming, look out." And John's thinking like, "Oh no, I don't have any bullets," and the other guy's coming at me. Then he realizes he's in a vehicle. They get off, Joe and John get off, and they're yelling at Jeff, "Get off him, there's a car coming." And the car comes flying by, and John and Joe are on one side, and it just runs them over and starts to drag down the street, and they're saying, "Oh shoot, Jeff just got run over." And then the car goes by, and there's Jeff. He says, "You okay?" And he says, "He missed me by that much. He was white as a ghost." And he says, and now the three of them are there, and the younger brother goes up. And now, we didn't set up a roadblock at the corner of Dexter and Laurel Street, but it was because all the cops had shown up and their cars were there, and he couldn't get through. So the younger brother just rams one of my cruisers and slowly pushes it out of the way. And you couldn't prepare for that, what happened. And then everybody started shooting at the car. And there was crossfire there, you can imagine. But I think even the best military or seasoned cops would have never dreamed that was going to happen that way. And then all of a sudden we hear an officer down. And now my guys have a choice. We're going to chase a terrorist, or we're going to go to the aid of a police officer. There's no question there. You go to the aid of that cop. And it's Dick Donahue from the transit that came to help us is now shot in his main artery right up in his crotch area, bleeding out on the back street of Watertown. And my officers are trying to help him. And one of my officers, Timmy Menton, was a medic in the service. He's got a tourniquet. He always carried a tourniquet with him, trying to get it. And the wound is so high up in his leg, he can't get anything to stop the bleeding. So he's starting to put direct pressure on him. And he's not having much luck. And he's looking at John, and he says, Sarge, I can't stop the bleeding because you're doing a good job. We're calling for an ambulance. Keep going, Timmy. Try, keep trying. And Dick Donahue pretty much bled out right there in Watertown. The ambulance came. We did CPR on him. We got him to the hospital. And Dick Donahue just last month was promoted to sergeant. Just an unbelievable story. You know, the doctors at Mount Auburn Hospital said, Chief, I can't tell you any medical reason why he doesn't have brain damage and he doesn't have more injuries than he does. And he does. You know, he's kind of, you know, not back to complete full duty yet. He may never be. But he had lost all his blood. He says, your guys did a great job doing CPR on him, but he had no blood when you were transporting him, so the CPR really didn't help. So it's a medical miracle that he's alive, and you know he has a young child. I think the child was about 1 year old when this happened, and you know he's back, and it just so we got a lot of breaks that day. And then when the officers came out afterwards, Timmy Menton actually drove the ambulance down because the two firefighters that were the EMTs that night in Watertown were in the back of the ambulance working on him. And they came out afterwards from the hospital and said, oh, boy, it stinks in here. You know, it stinks outside. What the heck is going on? You know, for I guess most cops, I didn't know this, but when you show up at an ambulance call, you put the emergency brake on. Well, Timmy didn't know that, so he drove the whole way to the hospital with the emergency brake on. And I got woken up. I had gone to bed, and Janet said, your phone's ringing, and this doesn't look like the regular number or a notification. This must be something. And it's my lieutenant. He says, Chief, they're shooting at us, and they're throwing bombs at us. And I think these are the guys that killed the MIT police officer. And I had gone to bed, and I didn't know that Sean Cawley had been killed. And I'm just trying to digest that. And I can hear the radio dispatch in the background, and I hear another explosion. Another bomb went off, and I said, all right, Lieutenant, don't tell me anymore. I'm on my way. So when I got there, the shooting had was over. The older brother had been transported. Dick Donahue had been transported. And they told me, we don't think Dick Donahue's going to make it. But I told you earlier that Watertown's really close to Cambridge and Watertown. This is 1 o'clock now in the morning, a little afterwards. And we have all the people, all the drunks coming back from the bars in Boston. So when I got there, we had they said, Chief, we got the second guy. You know, we had 4 or 5 people proned out around Watertown. And so we were kind of relaxed at that moment, thinking, okay, we got them. We got to get somebody to go down and identify them. And in that quiet moment, John, my sergeant, says, hey, Chief, I violated policy tonight. I said, what, John? What are you talking about? And he said, well, they were shooting at me, and I couldn't get the patrol. I thought they were closing in on me, so I rolled the car down the street. I said, yeah. And he said, well, it went down the street, and it hit a bunch of trash barrels, and then a bomb went off, and then it hit a car, and there's a lot of damage to the car, and I know that violates our policy. So I said it again. I said, John, are you shitting me? And he says, Chief, you're not mad at me? I said, John, mad at you? You're alive. I want to hug you. And we hugged each other right there in the middle of Dexter and Laurel Street. So that's why I'm so proud of my guys. You know, and I said, they'll teach that in the academy now, too. And now the manhunt starts to play out. And we thought we were going to catch him in 5 minutes. 10 minutes, a half an hour. We never dreamed that it would go on as long as, we don't plan right then, okay, this is going to be an 18-hour manhunt, let's start doing a command post, let's get logistics, let's get in all that. We did set up a command post down at the malls, but we thought, okay, this is, one way or another, this is going to be over soon. We didn't expect it to play out the way it did. And so many different things that happened, that we locked down a city, for the first time in America based on something that happened in my little community. And there's a lot of things that happen there. You know, one of the things when we locked down the city, the younger brother dumped the car about a mile away, and so it took us a while to clear that. There was another bomb in that car, so it took us a while to figure out, was he in the car, and then do that. And some of the federal agencies said, don't send any canine people down there. We have a dog that's going to come down and track him. So we're in the command post. Wow, they said, yeah, Super Dog is coming. So they're like, holy, I never heard of Super Dog. Like, wow, okay, Super Dog's coming. So Super Dog comes and goes to the car and starts the track and goes down the street, across the main street, across the next main street, into one town, the next town over, and Super Dog needs a new name because Super Dog didn't get the job done. But it threw us off as law enforcement, you can imagine, thinking that, did he get away or not? So, that, you know, when we had the discussions early in the morning with the governor and the mayor and everything like that, you know, how sure are you? My gut told me we got those perimeters set up, the inside perimeter and the outside perimeter, really fast, and we thought we had them inside. But because of Super Dog, we weren't sure. And then things played out, and you saw that, you know, mostly play out on TV. We lifted the lockdown at 6 o'clock that night because we took us methodically, we had 5 grid searches, we slowly did that. Unbeknownst to me and the command staff in the command post, we didn't know, but the president was putting a lot of pressure on the governor he says, how long can you keep a major city locked down? So I was against lifting the lockdown, and we had plans to saturate Watertown with all kinds of law enforcement over the next few days and weekends with tactical teams and everything like that. But at 5 o'clock at night, you know, this is every critical incident. In the beginning, you don't have enough people, and at the end, you have too many. Well, by 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we had at least 3,500, probably 4,000 law enforcement in Watertown. Some were there because they were asked to be there, but there was a lot of problems with self-deployment. And I don't have the time to go into that today, guys, but self-deployment isn't a Watertown problem. It's not a Boston problem. It's a problem across this country. We need to solve that problem because what we needed was people that would be under a command could help us. But individual officers acting on their own, whether they were federal agents, state, or local, were hurting us more than helping us. And that played true at the boat. So we lifted the lockdown at 6 o'clock. About 6:40, one of our town residents calls and says, and he told me the story, he says, Chief, I watched you all day on TV. You told me to stay in the house. At 6 o'clock, you told me it was okay to go out. I went out I'm fanatical about my boat, and it was a windy day, and I saw the strap going, and I wanted to get out there. And my wife said, oh, you in that friggin' boat, you know, go see your boat, you know. So he goes out, and he's trying to get the strap down, and it just didn't work right. And so he had to get a ladder, and it was all shrink-wrapped for the winter. And so he has a little zip window, and he got his ladder and unzipped it, and looks in, he can see blood on the boat. But it didn't hit him right away that it had anything to do with it. He's looking at his hand saying, geez, I was on the boat the other day, did I cut my hand? And then he looks a little bit further, sees more blood, and he sees a pair of shoes, and then he can see the younger brother with a hoodie on pulled over his head, motionless in the boat. So he calls us. And we get the call, 67 Franklin Street. And, you know, here's another one of the lessons learned, is we had great radio communication since 9/11. You know, a lot of money spent to keep law enforcement in communication. So all day long, whenever we got a call, we pushed it out over the radio. Shed door open, it wasn't open 2 hours ago. We sent tactical teams down there. So when the boat call came in, everybody was kind of dispersing because the lockdown had been lifted, the mayor had left, the Boston commissioner had left, and we say 67 Franklin Street, but there's still over 3,000 cops in Watertown. So 3,000 cops start heading for 67 Franklin Street. We got the Boston tactical team, we got the state police, we got from the command post where we're all set. But we didn't plan on every cop wanting to be that guy that gets the terrorist, right? So everybody shows up on Franklin Street, and they surround the boat. They surround the boat, right? And everybody's pointing at the boat. And the younger brother's on the boat, and there's a gaff in the boat, and he's trying to poke through for unknown reason, communicate whatever. We have every reason to believe that there's more guns on that boat, there's firearms, there's bombs. And as he's poking through it, somebody shoots. And then everybody shot. Over 250 rounds got shot there. And there was no guns, turns out there was no guns on the boat or anything else like that. I say this, Laurel Street, Dexter Ave, I'd say come in and rate that, anybody, and it'll be, military people would rate it an A+. Franklin Street, not so much. And I've said this down in Washington to the Homeland Security Secretary, to major city chiefs across the country. Everything in Watertown went great that day, at least it would look like that, but we could have been the jackasses of America, because why 10 cops didn't fall over and die when that happened was just a miracle. And then we slowed it down and we got the people out. But what happened was there was a Boston deputy on one side, a lieutenant from the state police on the other side, telling people, back off, we got people coming in. And if you were a Boston cop, you stopped when the commander told you that. If you weren't, you just ran right by him, whether you're federal, any other agency. The same thing happens to the lieutenant on the state police. So we get a lot of work to do on self-deployment. So we get him off the boat eventually, and people have asked me, like, how did this happen? Who was in charge? And it was what we call unified command. And I had studied that. I had never applied it before, and I had read about it. We all do the NIMS things. I'm saying, I don't think this is ever going to work, where one person doesn't make the final decision. But we were in that command post, and we had the FBI, we had the state police, we had the National Guard, we had Boston, Cambridge, myself, and we literally checked our egos at the door. We all knew each other. We all been on the job for a long time, and there was mutual respect, and we made the decisions together. There was never one argument, except the only time anything was spirited was on my end when they wanted to lift the lockdown. I didn't want to do it, but the whole day went on. We went around that table all the time and said, okay, every hour or two we're giving updates, and we had gotten some information that he might have got back to his college, which was about an hour and a half away. So the National Guard brought in helicopters to pick up some of the tactical teams to get them down in case we were going to do a raid down there. And so we're going around the table, the National Guard saying, okay, we deployed our helicopters. The FBI now is going to lift some more off of Quantico, and they might bring them up. Boston saying, we got 200 more officers coming. State police saying, we got 300 for the overnight shift. And I'm thinking, please don't ask me, because I got like 2 bikes left in the basement, and that's all I got left. But just joking aside, that's unified command work that it can't work all the time. We're back fighting among ourselves now that it's all over, but that day it worked. And I can't say enough about how everybody came together. It was my proudest moment. We did our last press conference at 11 o'clock at night. I wanted to just get home back to my family, and no one had warned me. I came out to the streets of Watertown, the main street, and it was literally lined with people, American flags, cheering, patting cops on the back, and everything like that. And that line went all the way back to Kenmore Square, back at Fenway Park, where all the colleges come out. And it was my proudest day in law enforcement. I know we're under fire now, guys, and everything like that. We're being criticized across the country. But my thought is, most people, they're silent, they're not as loud, but most people understand what the job of a local police officer is, and they have your support. I think they need to be a little louder about it, but so that was just unbelievable. And the sports teams get it. In Boston, the next day, I couldn't sleep. I went to work the next morning. I was there at like 5:30 in the morning, and my dispatcher at 7 o'clock in the morning said, hey, Chief, the Boston Bruins, the national hockey team, were on the phone. They were supposed to play last night, but now the game got postponed, and now they're going to play it at 1 o'clock, and all the Boston Bruins want to come out wearing Watertown police hats to start the game. And she said, isn't that great? I said, Jessica, isn't that great? Except we don't have Watertown police hats. No one ever wanted a Watertown police hat. She said, like, well, what should I tell them? I said, tell them we'll get them some hats. So I told one of my lieutenants, Mike, go wake somebody up, gets going. We need hats by 1 o'clock. And so he comes back. He goes, what should I do? I said, well, put Watertown Police, put strong on the back, and that'd be great. He comes back like 3 hours later. He's got like the Boston Bruins colors of black and gold. He's got black hats, Watertown Police in gold, the Bruins logo right in the middle of it and strong on the back. and we sent them into Boston, and the Bruins like, oh, these are great, we love them, and everything like that. So we started ordering more hats, and we're giving them out, and everything else like that. And then like 2 weeks later, the Bruins called and said, Chief, that's a licensed logo you guys got on your hat now? It was good for one day, but what are you guys doing over there? So now it's a collector's item. So I know I'm between you and the awards, and I want to get you to it. People have asked me, what does Boston Strong mean? In Boston Strong, to me, personally, when the marathon happened, the One Fund, the mayor and the governor stood up immediately, and they had been aware that, when 9/11 happened, and even Newtown, Connecticut, that a lot of people try to raise money in different groups. And then they started fighting over who gives the money and how you do that. So they established a One Fund by Monday night. And a lot of the big corporate people donated. And the city really rallied around the One Fund. We've raised over $80 million. Every person that died, I think the family got between $3 and $4 million. The amputees have gotten $2.5 to $3 million. The city really took care of it, and that's part of Boston Strong. When the bombs went off, the Lenox Hotel is right in the middle of where the finish line is. And the police and the FBI went in to talk to the manager and said, we need your hotel. We're taking this over. This is going to be part of our command post, and we need the rooms and everything like that. And they literally kicked all the guests out, and all the police did. And this crime scene on Boylston Street went on for 10 days. And the manager told the employees, the hotel's closed, we can't pay you. And the employees came to work every day. And the word spread out to the cops, hey, these people aren't getting paid. Most of the time they work on tips. And, throw them some money. And we all know cops are the cheapest people in the world, right? Like, so trying to get in a cop's pocket and give them some money. But the cops did, and they started tipping these employees and everything like that. What they didn't know was there was a jar at the front desk, and all the employees just threw all the money in there and donated it to the One Fund. That's Boston Strong. There's a doctor from Mass General Hospital that was running the marathon. And when the bombs went off, they stopped the marathon around Kenmore Square, about the 24, 25-mile marker. And he didn't get to finish. And he realizes what's going on. He's run 24 miles. Hears the bombs went off, and he was an Army surgeon overseas a couple of tours, but now he's working at Mass General. He says, I probably need to get to the hospital. So he continued to run another 4 miles to get to Mass General Hospital. Ended up doing 4 surgeries, including 3 amputations. That's Boston Strong. And then there's the Martin Richards family, the little boy, 8 years old, that went to the marathon that day with his sister, Jane, 6 years old, their older brother, Henry, 11, and their mom and dad. And they were right there at the Forum Restaurant when the bombs went off. And Mr. Richards now is at the hospital, and he saw his son, Martin, on the ground, and he knew that he wasn't going to make it. He saw his injuries, and he's told his wife, you have to stay here with Martin. Jane's lost her leg. And I have Henry with me, and he shielded Henry so he wouldn't see horrific things that were happening. And he gets to the hospital, and the surgeons rushed Jane in to do surgery. What he really didn't know right away was that his wife was seriously injured. She got shrapnel right through her eye, and she had a brain injury and lost sight in her eye. And he's at the hospital, and they said, Mr. Richards, you have some shrapnel in your ankle that we need to get out. We're going to put you in for surgery. And he says, no, you're not. I need to be here with my family. If you can do something to get it out, fine. And they tried, and they couldn't do it. And he said, later, I'm no tough guy, but I wasn't going to, let my family down. So he's there. Jane's in surgery. His wife calls him and says, Martin didn't make it. He goes, yeah, Denise, I kind of knew that. And he says to the Boston cop that's with him, I want to go back and be with Martin. He can't be alone. And this is the second in command of Boston. He knows how horrific the finish line is, how bad it is, what it looks like down there. He said, Mr. Richards, your daughter's in surgery. Your wife needs you. You're here with your son. You have an injury. Just stay here. He said, no, Danny, I need to go back. I need to be with Martin. He can't be alone. And this commander's thinking like, oh, no, I don't want to bring this guy back there. I don't know what it's going to look like. The guys are tied up. They're thinking there's like more explosives devices and everything else like that. So they start to drive because he won't take no for an answer. And they start to get down towards the finish line. And Danny's cringing, thinking what's going to happen. What he didn't know was there was 10 officers. Many of them had young children. 10 Boston cops took it upon themselves to go into that Forum restaurant, take sheets out, and put them over the 3 bodies. And they were standing at attention. Over Martin. He said, Mr. Richard, your son's not alone. I said, you're right. Take me back. I need to be with my wife and my daughter. That's Boston strong. And I'll just end it here by saying, the terrorists came to Boston and they tried to ruin our marathon. We did get knocked down, like I told you earlier. Boston was crushed by it. They tried to put fear in our city. And the city rose up. We got back up on our feet within a couple of days. And we're a better community because of it. Law enforcement stronger in Boston and across this country. The resiliency of a city when we have it, something like happened. There was no looting that happened in Boston when this happened. Most of the people that ran out of restaurants went back days or weeks later and paid their bills. Boston stuck together. It would be no different down here in South Florida if an incident happened. It would be South Florida strong or some term like that. No terrorist is going to ruin our country. When you knock an American down, we're going to get back up and we're going to be stronger. Thank you.
Wow, how do you follow that up? By the way, if I may, Janet, will you please stand? Janet, will you please? Chief's wife, Janet, is here, ladies and gentlemen. Chief, I can't thank you enough on behalf of our committee. Spectacular speech, inspirational. I know everybody in this room is behind you guys, always have been, always will be. So thank you again for coming down and bringing your wife, Janet. We really appreciate that. We're honored you're here. Thank you again. Okay.